Now, how do advertisers actually get your location data? How do they get that lat long information from you? Well, if you are using an app, you have to have location services turned on that app. I'm sure everyone's been in the situation where you have been presented with a message such as this: Uber or Maps would like to use your current location. Do you allow it to? Now, if you're using something like a weather app or an Uber app, you have to share your location for that app to function properly. You could choose to say, you can use my location while I'm using the app, but only when I'm using the app. Or you could choose to have that app continue to collect your location data even when you're not using the app, when it's running in the background or just open in the background. You might get served a message like this: weather has been using your location in the background. Do you want to continue allowing this? Now, why would they do that? Well, those apps want to continually gather information about a user to determine where they are, what they're doing, where they're shopping, how accurate are their information on that user. Were you served an ad for a location, and then did you walk into the store? So, using this type of data, an ad tech company could collect it and then use that data to serve an ad on an app that you aren't even currently using. So, how does that work? Let's say you have the Weather Channel, and the Weather Channel is collecting your location information in the background because you allowed it to. The Weather Channel will be sending that information to a location advertising company and saying device 123 ABCD is in this location. That advertising company would then look for that device in that location on other apps and say, hey, I see that device is using Words with Friends, and I know from the Weather Channel that they are currently in this location, and I'm going to serve them a Starbucks ad because Starbucks is trying to target somebody who is in that location. So that's why apps will continue to collect your information on the background, even if you're not using it, and they can use that information to serve you ads in apps outside of that particular app that is collecting your data. Now, what companies actually specialize in that? Well, there are a handful: Ground Truth, ThinkNear, Simplify, Gimbal, Recruit, Foursquare, all companies that claim to specialize in location services. Exactly where they get their data and how they work varies slightly from company to company, but these companies have all made a name for themselves by specializing in mobile and location advertising as a product. Now, we also want to talk about fraudulent data. Now, we've talked about fraud in 201, and just like anything else, there's fraud in location information. Now, why is there fraud? Well, sometimes it's unintentional, but fraud is usually intentional. And it is because when you are sharing location data with an advertiser, your data now becomes more valuable. Your inventory, your ad unit becomes more valuable. That's because advertisers are willing to pay more for an ad if they know where it is, for all the reasons that we've talked about before. So things that you want to look out for include centroids, which is finding the center of a particular location, be it a state or a country. So for example, the centroid for California is in the middle of the Sierra National Forest. So if all of a sudden you see a ton of impressions coming from the middle of a forest, you might get a little suspicious because that doesn't quite make sense. So why would that happen? It could be that an app has a lot of users in Los Angeles and they aren't collecting location data because their users haven't allowed that information to come through their app. They aren't sharing it. But the app wants to get more money for their ads. So what they'll do is they could hard code a lat long into all of their bid requests. Say every single request that comes through that app is going to be from California, and they just happen to choose the center of California as the latitude and longitude information that they're going to pass through. So advertisers know, or ad tech companies know what the centroids are, and if they see it, they'll usually kick it out. Another thing to look for is randomized lat long data. So back to our example of New York City, if we were to look at the Empire State Building, we would expect to see a large concentration of requests coming from right around the building, right in front of it, where workers are going in and out, where tourists are going every day. There'd be a high concentration of people right there. But If a app was trying to fudge their latitude and longitude data, instead of just putting in one centroid, like in the previous example, what they might do is create a script to randomize the lat long to make it look more like what you would expect, instead of just one location coming every time. However, randomized lat longs tend to look something like this, where they're pretty evenly spaced and you don't see a heavy up in concentrated areas like you would expect. So if that was to happen in this situation and you were to layer in that randomized lat long information on top of a map, it clearly would look out of place and not what you would expect to see from normal day-to-day use. Those ad tech companies that we just mentioned are tasked with looking for this type of data and preventing it from making it through their system and onto the advertiser. So that covers location targeting for the Digital Advertising and Marketing 301 course.